What if I showed you a chokehold that you can apply from the bottom of the fight? That would not only be good, but it would be revolutionary. Welcome to the triangle. When your opponent is trying to punch you from inside your guard, it's a great opportunity to use the triangle against them and finish the fight. As the punch is coming, get ready by uncrossing your feet, getting an angle, wedging your foot on his hip, cupping his triceps, and controlling his head. By acquiring this position, you won't get hurt. Create a space by sliding your shoulder back and still control his head and wrist with your hands. Using the space you just created, shoot your leg over his shoulder and cross your feet. This will create the triangle setup position in which your opponent's head and arm are trapped between your legs. Make sure you cup both of his triceps to stop his punches. From the triangle setup, you're now ready to apply the finishing steps, cinch the triangle, and go for the tap. So to recap, you can use your opponent's punches to get to triangle setup. If your opponent doesn't punch, but makes a mistake of putting the hands on the ground, you can also get to triangle setup. When your opponent tries to retract his arm to free it, guide his wrist back and get your toes through the bend of his elbow. When you're dealing with a huge opponent or if you have longer legs, retracting your leg might not be the easiest thing to do. In that case, straighten your leg, punch his wrist to his chest, and shoot your leg over his shoulder, get into the triangle setup with the around the world variation. After you get the triangle set up, you can go ahead and apply the finishing steps to get the tap. Let's talk about the finishing steps. Once you have acquired the triangle setup, which is to trap his head and arm between your legs and cup his triceps to not get punched, raise your hips to expose his arm, grab his wrist and elbow to shove his arm to the side, uncross your feet making sure that first you grab his head, place your foot on his hip, walk away, bite the neck, cinch the leg, close the triangle, squeeze your knees together, pull his head down and raise your hips for the finish. When being pinned by a super heavy opponent, it might be tough to get sideways. For this case, we have the giant killer variation. When being pinned by a giant, he will drive the weight and he will be uncomfortable. At that point, you want to cross your feet up his back, pinch your knees, and extend your legs to get a little distance from him. Place your hands on his head, put your foot on the ground, and pushing off his head and your foot, scape your hips. Place the inside foot on his hip, square off with him, slide your hands to his wrist, and place the other foot on his hips. Your legs manage the distance. Allow him to enter as you retract your leg and bite his neck. Cinch the triangle and close it. Drive his arm to the side, pull his head down, squeeze your knees and raise your hips for the finish. When your opponent exposes his arms and you decide to go for an arm lock, but he's so strong that he's able to pull his arm out, you always have the opportunity to finish with a triangle choke. When my opponent is able to pull his arm out, my first concern is to get my leg over his head, cross my feet, and get my legs clampy. I get his arm across and grab his head, placing my foot on his hip so I can walk backwards on my shoulders, bite his neck tightly, cinch it with my hand, and then close it, throwing my other leg over my ankle. I place both of my hands on his head, squeeze my knees together, pull his head down, and raise my hips for the tap.